good morning. Good morning. And yes, good morning again. Happy Saturday to you, my friend. I want to say good morning to all those of you who are joining us this morning by way of Facebook Live. Welcome this morning also to those of you who are joining us by way of YouTube this morning. And then there are those who will join us by way of phone. We're just grateful today to be found on the wake up list. Don't let me get started on that one because it's another day's journey, and I'm just glad about it. Today, I want to say welcome again to all of you who have been tuning in with us. I know we've been kind of off the circuit for a moment. We've had some technical difficulties that we worked through, but we finally got everything back up and running. And so we're just happy that the good Lord has smiled on us and has allowed us to get some technology challenges ironed out. Hey, listen, welcome. But can I be honest with you? If you live in this life, you're going to have some challenges of some kind. This is nothing more than just one four-letter word, L-I-F-E. Life happens, but the reality is you find a way to adjust and adapt. And so I'm just glad we'll be doing some commercials on this week again, inviting our viewers to come on in. We have some amazing speakers who we have gotten confirmed as well. We've been doing a series this season on the state of Black men, unapologetically trying to raise awareness, also trying to raise the bar for expectations, and also issuing a call to action for those persons who may find themselves in the grips of this crises that we find our Black men in. We want to be intentional today. Want to try to go back. I know it's been a slight space since our last presentation, and so I want to try to go back this morning and give you an update. And then let me just say some quick housekeeping. If you're listening today or you tune in, if you have a Black male, you want to give them some very relevant information, you can certainly hit that share button at the bottom. You can also put a comment in. Good morning, Sister Denise Fonville from all the way in Jacksonville, North Carolina. We'll do it just like that when we get a viewer to tune in. Come on in. Come out the weeds. Say good morning. Say amen. Say hello. Say something. When you say it, we'll try to give you a shout out this morning. We're in the process of trying to raise awareness around the state of Black men. Be clear about one thing, that our Black men are in a crisis across this country. All you have to do is just go right out your front door and you will see firsthand that many of our young men are angry. We're going to be talking about that in this series. Many Black men are angry. Some of them are frustrated. And then even some feel like there's no hope, that they're trapped in a vicious cycle. But I got some good news for you. We're going to be bringing in some scholars who are experts in the area of Black men intervention. And so we're excited about that as well. Want to thank you once again for tuning in. Again, if you have a Black male, you're going to be surprised at some of the things, some of the systems. Hear me good today. We're going to be talking about systems that are designed to get and work against Black men. There are code words in this country of America that are code words against Black men. And then we're going to also talk about some legal areas that are really and truly designed to keep Black men down. Listen, I'm unapologetic. I'm going to bring you the facts, not the feelings. I'm not even concerned so much about a person's feelings because I'm going to show you some facts that are undeniable. And then we can have a conversation. Listen, I'll take any pushback you give me, but I tell you what, we're going to set some ground rules and we're going to talk about some facts. I'm going to give you some facts. And then if you got some facts to negate those facts, let's talk about them. But one thing we do not want to do is to get bogged down in our emotions, because that's been a trick of some of the societal organizations to get you wrapped up so much in your emotions that you ignore the obvious. We're going to be talking about a new deal. That's exactly right. And I also want to tell you, part of today's session and on next week as well is about this notion called color blindness. Listen, it's a I hate to say this, but it's a ploy to get you off the facts. And the reality is, we just came out of Black History Month, and I tell you right now, it's Black history every day for me. We live in this America, and unapologetically. There are things like the critical race theory, which are hot button topics, even as we speak right now, that there are those who are trying to suppress the history that we have come through as a people, and more specifically as a Black male. Listen, there are several ways that you can join us. I want to give you a moment, trying to give a few more to join us this morning. Listen, if you have Facebook, you can tune us in every Saturday for 60 minutes on Facebook Live, Dr. K.O. Williams Space Ministry. You can put that handle in. You can also join us on YouTube, Dr. K.O. Williams Space Ministry, and then you can also dial in. But I also want to challenge you today. Down in the lower left, there is this way that you can contact us directly. Your voice matters. That's exactly right. If you want us to dig in, dive deeper on some other topics as well, all you got to do is send us a communication, bit.ly/Real Talk Your Voice. Listen, this is a session around real talk. We're trying to give coaching sessions as well for people who are struggling in this thing called LIFE, life. We try to address life's issues. I'll be real straightforward with you. It's straight, honest, transparent conversation, but we never leave without trying to give you some practical tools. And we have in this series as well some very practical resources to come as well. Anyone can participate. Again, it's every Saturday for 60 minutes from 9 to 10. So let's get started today. We've charted on a journey around the state of Black men. State of Black men in America is a very big conversation. And I want you to understand that if you have any Black males in your network, in your family, in your community, in your church, listen, you want to be an advocate. Now, this is not for everyone, but I tell you what, it affects everyone, because the truth of the matter is, when you understand the state of Black men, you will understand that we play a very significant role in America. And there is some outright intention around keeping our Black men in a pigeonhole. That is simply to say that if we can keep the Black man confined, we can control the Black race. Let me tell you, I know a lot of females are independent. Yes, I understand all that, but I'm going to go straight to the core of the matter. These next couple of sessions are around the foundation of the Black community. You give me a strong Black man, and I'll show you a strong Black community. And I'm going to show you some research that even suggests, even in the church, I want to go directly to the core of the matter. We're going to get into a presentation shortly, but I want to talk to somebody today. Listen, the fact is, current research says that when a female is the first person to experience Christianity in the home, you have about a 17% ratio that the men, the father, the male, will come along on that Christian journey. But can I talk to somebody today? The research says that when a Black male is the first person to encounter Christianity, you have a 75% chance of that family engaging into Christianity. Let me tell you something. I know a lot of people don't want to hear it, but I'm telling you right now, there's a biblical foundation around the role of the male in the family. I'm talking about Black men today. I'm not talking about all men. I want to talk about Black men. And when you get a Black male who takes their rightful position and place in the family. I want to help somebody. You talking about putting the family on steroids. Let me help somebody today. It's a good way to move that needle around Christianity. Now, I want to talk to some male who says, I'm the head of the house. Well, I want to first tell you that you got to be under submission before you can have submission. Oh, let me talk to somebody on a Saturday morning. You can't be going around here demanding authority and you not under authority. Yes, when I talk about the biblical model, let me tell somebody today, if you're going to say that you want to assume your authority in the home, let me say it again. You can't have authority unless you first are under authority. Male, let me talk to you real fast. You can't go around bragging you the head of the house and you're not submitted to someone who's over you. It is a biblical model. Good morning, Mr. Gene Flanagan. My mentor is on the line with us today. Listen, we had a little technical difficulty, but we're able now to get all that fine-tuned, and boy, do we have some sessions lined up for everybody. We've taken advantage of that small sabbatical to line up some very good keynote speakers, and I'm talking today around some intentionality. We're going to dig deep around some of the challenges that our Black men are facing. And can I tell you something? Unapologetically, it doesn't matter whether it's religious, it doesn't matter whether it's education, it doesn't even matter if it's just family orientation. When you get the male to take their rightful place, it is a biblical model that moves the family progress forward. Now, we do have some challenges because we have people doing what I call the helicopter concept. For example, I hear men who use this term, woman, submit yourself to your husband. You're supposed to submit to me. And I say, yes, that's part of the text. But when you read Paul's admonishment to the church in Corinth and in Ephesians, what he says to them is simple. Male, you first got to be under the authority of Christ before you can exercise any authority to somebody else. Let me talk to somebody today. If you want real biblical progress, then you got to go the real biblical way. I'm so tired of people doing the helicopter concept. They go in, Paul says if you violate one part of the law, you violated all the law. And I am so tired of people going into the Holy Writ trying to find a scripture that will suit their case. I'm telling you right now that there's a challenge in our communities, and I want to lift up the challenge of the Black male. Listen, we have now I'm going to go down through there, just giving you a highlight. We have now, I was speaking to an employer just recently, and you know what he said? We now have what we call an initiative for the double minority. That's right. They don't want the Black male. What he says he looks for is a woman who is Black, because he says he can make a strong argument that he has a double minority. Which, listen, I'm all for equality, but at the same time, let's be clear about one thing. There's a biblical model. And when you follow that biblical model, unapologetically, I say that you have a progression that you will not experience if you're not under that spiritual and biblical model. Now, I want to talk to somebody also in this series. We're going to be talking about several crises in the Black male. Number one, we got professionals who are lined up already to talk about the state of Black men's health. Can I talk to somebody today that, listen, do you know that a recent paper that I just read says that Black men's health is 7 times worse than that of white men? Listen, I'm talking about facts. And I said this in the beginning. If you want to talk to me about facts. I'm not interested in any feelings and emotions right now. What I am interested in is trying to bring some awareness to the state of Black men. Black men's health is 7 times worse than that of whites. We know, for example, lack of access to health care. We also know about some of the atrocities that have happened in our country, in the Black community, and more specifically to Black men. Do you not understand that Tuskegee? I'll talk about it. We got a professional to come in and talk about the atrocity that happened around Tuskegee, that the government participated in misguiding Black men. Now, let me talk to you for a moment. The state of Black men's health. Hallelujah. Today, I come to put a spotlight on the state of Black men in America, because when you get the Black man in his rightful place, you talking about a progression like something you've never seen before. Not only are we going to be talking about the state of Black men's health, which I tell you, when you look at the state of Black men's health, it is something that we all can attest. When it comes to Black men's health, there needs to be some intervention. Black men are taught to be providers. We're taught to be protectors. And guess what? In that whole mindset, we fail to do the basics, which is to take care of ourselves. I want to talk to you about some opportunities to improve your Black men's health, because what good is a Black male when their health becomes a challenge, and then you end up having to be the caregiver? I'm talking to somebody today. Not only do we want to talk about Black men's health, we want to talk about the state of Black men's education. Because can I tell you something, that there was a time when education was not even an option for Blacks. I want to talk good to somebody today. And there is this slow digression of Black men in education. I want to talk to some Black male today, because typically you become a provider for some family. And can I talk to you? I taught GED classes, and I want to speak directly to somebody today. Do you not know that the research says that when you have a high school diploma, that you will earn $1 million more in your career than someone who doesn't have a GED or a high school diploma? I've taught in the sessions. As a matter of fact, I was just in a establishment this past week, and the young man at the cash register says, Mr. Williams, aren't you my former teacher? I didn't recognize the young man. And he says, you were the one that helped me to stay on track to get my GED. I felt real good, because I said to him, and there were people behind me, and I said to him, young man, you do realize you just set yourself up to earn $1 million more in your lifetime. It's the same thing I've been saying all along. And don't let nobody fool you now, that this country that we live in is driven by education. It is a tool that many use to disqualify people, and more specifically, Black men. And so we're going to talk about the state of Black men's education. Listen, we're going to talk about the state of Black men in the family. I want to talk to somebody today that, listen, there are so many silent, absent fathers in our communities. And let me tell you something, it has a bearing on the progression of the family. Women, let me say this to you unapologetically. Yes, you can be the key person in the home, but make no mistake about it. When the male is there, there is a level of progression that cannot happen without that male's dominant presence being there. I applaud the women in our country. I applaud the Black females who stepped up to the plate in the midst of all the absentee fathers. But be clear about one thing. The research has already established when there is a Black male in the family structure, there is a more successful rate of progression for that family. It is the biblical model, and I thank God that the research supports that. We're going to talk about what it means, fathers, also to step up and make a pledge. Listen, because can I talk to somebody? You can be a good father, get this, and also not be in the home. Yes, it's called co-parenting. Who am I talking to today? The reality is sometimes the good book, listen to this scripture that says, if at all possible, you read it when you get a chance. Many people misquote the scripture. Follow peace. Blessed are the peacemakers, those people who follow peace. And the text says, if at all possible, follow peace with all men. Because can I talk to somebody today? I'm talking directly to my listening audience. Everybody you can't follow peace with. Some people are peace breakers. I'm trying to talk to somebody today. And when you acknowledge that you can still do your responsibility, even sometimes when you can't live under the same roof. I want you to understand that there is no exception. If you are a black male and you have a family, then you still can step up to the plate and acknowledge your responsibilities. And then I want to also talk about the state of black men in incarceration. That's what we're going to land on today and next week as well. Listen, you would be surprised at the number of black males that are incarcerated even as we speak. And you need to understand that there is an intentionality around keeping black males incarcerated. We're going to talk about that today, and we're going to use some facts from a book by Michelle Alexander called Mass Incarceration. This whole notion around keeping black men incarcerated, it is the new Jim Crow. We're going to talk about that in our session today. I'm going to give you some facts. I'm unapologetic about it. If you can't tell already, I want to have an honest conversation, but I'm not interested in no feelings, because what I see more and more and more are our young black males without black male figures and role models. I thank God for all the other models that step up and all the other mentors that step up. But there's a concept called the contextuality of a mentor. When you have a mentor that looks like you, your probability rate increases. Oh, I know people say, oh, he's on a tangent this morning. Well, you're exactly right, because I want our black men to find our rightful place in this, the United States of America. We can do it, but it's going to be a joint effort. And I'm challenging somebody today to step out and step up, because when you step out and step up, you're making ways for the next generation. I have some wonderful poems to talk to you about around the notion of paying it forward. I want to talk to somebody today, much like myself. I've been very blessed in my career. I didn't get where I am today on my own. I have some powerful mentors. The late Deacon William Ambrose, the late Apostle L.O. Sanders, the late Pastor Howard E. McNair. When I talk to you, the late Bishop F.C. Barnes, when I'm telling you right now, I've been blessed because I've had mentors. And do you not know that the research says that when a young black male has a black male mentor, that their probability rate of success increases? And that's what I want to talk about today, just briefly, around a concept called paying it forward. If someone has made it possible for you to be where you are, a news flash, a breaking news, you didn't get where you are on your own. And sometimes we go and act just like we have gotten to this place on our own, but there's a concept called paying it forward. And so when you see me on broadcasts like this, I'm trying to use what I have been benefited from to help some black male to get up and step up and do the right thing. Find some young black male and invest into that young man. You're actually trying to pay it forward. Now listen, there's no way under the sun I can pay my mentors for what they have done. But I can tell you this much: every time I do a good deed, I do it in the name of some of those mentors that I have just called out. Now, I can tell you, I have all kinds of mentors. I have one on the line, Mr. Gene Flanagan. Listen, he's not black, but I tell you what, I'm not so naive to understand that your circle of network should expand. And this is what I want to talk about to a black male. Don't limit yourself uh, to a small pool. You expand yourself so that when you go to pour back into someone else, you can show them, you can demonstrate to them that life has more to offer than what they see at present. So somebody said, you did all this talking, but I don't see no data yet. Well, wonderful. I'm ready to get started. This is the beginning of a series around the state of black men, mass incarceration. So let's get busy on our presentation. And listen, there's a book. It's called The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. I want to talk, we're going to get more into this colorblindness, but there has been an intentionality. I was just recently in a think tank session, and a lady says, I'm colorblind. I said, that's humanly impossible. We had some back and forth. I mean, some robust conversation. We agreed to disagree because what I said was, I'm going to always be black. And there are things about my contextualization that are what we now know to be a term called hermeneutics. That simply means that everything that I have encountered up until this point informs my decisions of who I am. So yes, it's wonderful. It's a nice concept, but the reality is you will never forget the context of who you are and where you came from. There are certain things about me. I just had a conversation with somebody just yesterday at a business luncheon, and they were trying to talk about, oh, Dr. Williams, you just so well polished, this, that, and third. You know what I told them? Be clear about one thing. I'm a product of the projects down in Jacksonville, North Carolina, from Sandy Run Project. They looked at me funny. They said, I would have never known. And you know what I told them? Don't let the bow tie fool you, my friend. I have a context that I cannot get away from. And guess what? It informs who I am. Now, I can go in corporate America and I can engage with the best of them, but I'm not going to denounce who I am and where I came from. It's this notion around being colorblind. It's, oh, we're all in the same arena. No, we come to the space, but be clear about one thing. You can never get away from who you are. Now, there is a term called assimilation, that there are those who want to be received so bad by other contexts until they're willing to try to lose who they are. What a sad person, because as the president said, to thine own self be true. You got to start with being true to who you are. So this age of being colorblind, I'm not about it. I can say that we all should work towards diversity and equality and inclusion. I'll give you those three. That's called DEI, by the way. That's a real big conversation that's going on in our country, even around research, diversity, inclusion, and equity. So we know that happens. But even in that, what we're saying is you don't lose who you are in the process of trying to gain diversity. So let's get started today on our PowerPoint, and let's just see how far we can go in our session today. The state of black men, mass incarceration. All right, next slide, please. So we know Michelle Alexander did a wonderful job doing some research around mass incarceration. Here it is right here. This is data from the U.S. Bureau of the Justice Stats. Again, I say, let's have a conversation, but let's talk about some facts while we're doing it. When you look at the U.S. state and federal prison population, just millions of people incarcerated. And you can see, look at that first number. When you look down at the bottom, 1925. Oh my goodness. And look all the way up in her research up to 2015. Can you see the progression from zero past 1925, before 1925, of this mass incarceration, and then this trend? Look at it. Over a million. It's millions of people in a prison cell. My friends, listen, we are the world-class country. And there's some things that we have that are not bragging rights, to be clear. Next slide. Well, here you have it. I tried to give you facts. I just told you that we are a world-class country. I was in Phoenix, Arizona, just about a month ago, and they were talking about the state of Black men. And do you not know that the presenter used this very same chart to talk about the crisis that we're in America? Look at India. It's a third world country. But they figured out how to deal with people without having the whole country incarcerated. They lead the chart in 30 per 100,000. But look at America. We are the top leading country in the world. Not in America, but in the world. 670 per 100,000. You can see for yourself that we've got a mass incarceration problem. When somebody does wrong, throwing them in a prison cell without some rehabilitation is not the answer. But in America, you can see, we're going to talk a little bit more about what that 670 looks like. Next slide, please. Well, I wanted to use this example of a Black male, and it is about how you can have a legacy of exclusion. It is one of the most saddest slides I have to present today, because what this represents is generations of racial exclusion. Generations of Black men who are born in the U.S. have been denied the right to participate in our electoral democracy. For example, there's a young man named Javarius Cotton who cannot vote. Listen to this. Keep up with it with me. His great-great-grandfather could not vote because he was a slave. And we're going to talk about how the intentionality of this country in keeping the basic human rights contained to certain races. His great-great-grandfather could not vote because he was a slave. And during slavery, it was against the law for a Black to vote. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. Then his great-grandfather, his great-great-grandfather couldn't vote because he was a slave. His great-grandfather was killed by the KKK for trying to vote, a basic human right. And the man loses his life. And then Javarius, his grandfather, listen to this, didn't vote due to Klan intimidation. So his father was killed, and then it brought on intimidation on the son. Well, now Javarius' father, Lord have mercy, was barred from voting by poll taxes and literacy tests. Lord have mercy. That they had to pay to vote, my friends. Or, as I told someone, it's documented that during slavery, they would ask a Black male, because he was the first one to be able to give him the right to vote, they would have a jar of marbles and ask the Black man to tell them how many marbles are in the jar in order for him to vote. Well, you already know that that's totally unhumane. Most of us don't have no psychic powers. All right. And then now we get down to Javaris. He can't vote because he's been labeled a felon and is currently on parole. Do you see that there is a long history? There's a lot of Javarises in our community who, when you date back all these barriers around keeping the black male down, I want to ask you today, take a moment. Do you know any Javarises in your community? Do you have any in your family? Like, they created these laws now around felony. We're going to talk about this notion of felons and what it does to your basic human rights. Next slide. Now, when you look at this notion, I tried now to put it in a different perspective. It shows that per 100,000, India is the lowest. We now can look at this all the way to the right and look at the green. You can see per 100,000, Black Americans are 2,207. Lord have mercy. And when you look at the black male, which is on the far right, and the black column, you can see it should be a crime to have this many human beings incarcerated. We have not figured this system out. And that's what I want to challenge. If you don't like what I'm saying, then you at least bring me some data to negotiate or negate this. But what I can tell you today, sitting on this session, is that we have a mass incarceration problem. That when you have 4,347,000 per 100,000 black men incarcerated, we have a mass incarceration problem in our country. Next slide. Now, I want to talk about a caste system. And this is a hierarchical system. You know, it used to be a time they would say the low class, the middle class, and then the upper class. But I came to talk to somebody today to tell you that this country has all but obliterated the middle class. Working people cannot survive. I want to tell you that we have a problem. And part of this problem is this caste system. And can I talk to somebody today? People don't want to talk about it, but what slavery did was made the black male subservient. That means that you are under the white dominant male. That's one of the atrocities that happened during slavery. It created this system of hierarchy that two men born in America, and some of them, let me autocorrect that. Two men born in this world, you would think should incur or benefit from the basic same human rights. I did my dissertation on this, and I want to try to be as nice as I can. But there are certain human rights. I don't care where you're born at. If you're born in India, if you're born in America, if you are a human being, there are certain human rights that you should be entitled to. And then our founding fathers, they put it in the Constitution, certain inalienable right. That means that you cannot be separated from certain rights. My friends, we had to go back and reassess that Constitution because it was not certain inalienable rights. And then we're going to talk about Jim Crow. Many people don't even know what the word Jim Crow means, but we're going to deal with that here in just a little bit. And then ultimately, this notion around mass incarceration. Now, listen, I know that this is not a popular topic, And I hope that the good Lord gives me as much energy and as much a social media presence as possible to raise awareness and sound the alarm that no, we don't have slavery as we knew it, but we have a new type of slavery, and it's called mass incarceration. Next slide. Listen, there are what we call black codes. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. Several presidents participated in those black codes, and what I'm on a trance on a trail, on an advocacy to sound the alarm to our black people and our black males that sometimes you're in conversations and there are black code words that you don't even you're not even aware of. We're going to talk about them. For example, there's a new term now called convict leasing. Are you aware that there are private prisons? They're called privatized prison systems. That means that there are people who go into business to build prisons, and then they create a pipeline back over to the judicial system, which says, when you convict that black man, send him to my prison so I can make money off that black male. That's why it's a big, long, very contentious debate around private convict institutions. That there are prisons, as we know today. You just look it up. Put it in your Google search. Privatized prison systems. And that there are people who make money off sending black males to prison. And then they wonder why you get these long sentences, because the longer you stay there, you got it, the more money is coming to the prison. The state sends state dollars. I'm telling you, we have a mass incarceration problem in our country. Reconstruction. Many people don't even know what this term is, and I wanted to take some time that after slavery and the atrocities that were happening, people started realizing that what they were doing to blacks was just humanly unfair. So they come up with these amendments. For example, the 13th Amendment. When you get a chance, I want you to go and Google that. You're going to be astounded at the disingenuousness of the 13th Amendment. That it gave the appearance that they abolished slavery, but they made an exception in the amendment. And that exception was, except that he be a convict. So then you see already, it was a loophole in the amendment. So if we can deem you a criminal, then the amendment doesn't apply. Go and read it. Many people don't understand that the 13th Amendment had a loophole. And then the 14th Amendment gave due process and equal protection under the laws, which we know that was more than just, it was just a prototype, but really no substance to it, right? And then black men could vote with the 15th Amendment. And you would be surprised at what history doesn't tell you is the number of African-American men who took political careers as a result of the 15th Amendment. Now, you can imagine if a person is being benefited from your labor, you work, they get paid, you get basically nothing. Well, when you remove that from someone, you can all but predict there's going to be some backlash. And yes, there became this backlash. Listen, know your history. This is what people do not want you to talk about. Ain't nobody stop this mouth of mine. I want to let you understand something, that we're in a crisis. And the crisis is how to keep the black male incarcerated. Because when you incarcerate him, he is now the property of the state. He loses his basic human rights. And so what happens as this movement began to dismantle this slavery and all of this oppression, you started seeing political campaigns to reverse gains of Reconstruction. So in other words, you started seeing political opponents trying to appeal to the fear. They will tell you that, we want law and order. And out of that emerges the KKK terrorists. There also came these segregation laws aimed at keeping poor whites from politically aligning with poor blacks against white elites. This was called the populist movement. And I'm so glad, let me just say, that Dr. Martin Luther King, the late Dr. Martin Luther King, got a hold of the vision. And he started what is called the Poor People's Movement. It is what many theologians and scholars say ultimately claimed his life, because he was able to not only talk to the poor blacks, but he figured out that there were poor whites who did not benefit from this elite caste system. And he synergized them for a movement called the Poor People's Campaign. Now, let me tell you something. Next slide. This was a powerful movement, which is still in place today. Dr. William Barber, who now leads that movement, trying to raise awareness that we are all equal and we should all benefit from this America. We know about the civil rights movement. Dr. Martin Luther King worked towards desegregation, and in many places people argue did more harm than good. People lost their lives trying to get desegregation, as well as voting rights. We just talked about that. You heard me talk about the Poor People's Movement. This is a movement you should Google in your Google address, because it's a movement, if you're looking to do something, to join the fight to bring equality in this America, and to bring down this caste system that the 1% rules the world, while this other large majority is subservient and oppressed by the 1%. This whole notion around law and order, seed planted during the civil rights movement. One of the things they tried to do was to try to get folks to be fearful. It is a political tactic that when you use the media and other forms of communication to raise fear, for example, that black men are violent, that black men are dangerous. Listen, when you start creating those type narratives, black men are being incarcerated at alarming rates because they're violent. Listen, all those are false narratives. And guess what happens? When you start that narrative, people buy into it. And when they buy into it, it moves the political needle. We're going to talk a little bit more about the benefit of that. Next slide. What we also know is this. When you talk about the Jim Crow movement, I wanted to share this with somebody today, because maybe you don't know, but I want you to understand that the Jim Crow, when you hear it, the Jim Crow laws dominated societies in the South for African Americans. But what you may not know was Jim Crow was a derogatory term from the 1828 minstrel song Jump, Jim Crow, performed in blackface. I want to talk to somebody today that there are a lot of code words that you need to be familiar with. And I want to talk to you today. I agree with so many of my people. Good morning, Sister George down in Snow Hill, North Carolina. Brother Terrence, thank you, colleague from Jacksonville. Sister Mary Bryan, thank you for tuning in. Also, my good friend, um, Brother Terrence, is a classmate who talks about Wilmington. If you get a chance, you ought to just Google the history of Wilmington during that Reconstruction period. It is staggering. But what I want to, Mr. Flanagan said everything you are covering should be a part of American history course of study, so our kids will know and understand key issues in the Black experience. I so thank you for that affirmation, Mr. Flanagan, because what happens is what we now know to be true is that the history book, I did not know this until I plunged deep into the research, that the history books only reflect the pen of the person that wrote it. Can I break that down? Well, if a white European male writes the history book and don't want you to understand some of the atrocities, then they leave those atrocities out of the book because they have the pen. This is what I want to raise awareness around. These political tactics. Listen, intense focus on crime by politicians. This latest president, number 45, who ran a campaign on Make America Great Again as if somehow it was not great now. Well, I need to tell you that he demonstrated that code language when he says, "I believe in law and order." It's a political campaign language that speaks directly, derogatorily to Black men. It is to suggest that the riots and things were promoted by Black men. But can I tell you something? I'm a Martin Luther King Jr. scholar. And what the late Martin Luther King Jr. says is sometimes rioting is the language of the oppressed. And what he says is, when you will not listen to me any other way, I'll find a way to make you have a conversation with me. I'm telling you, I don't promote riots, but what he found was sometimes rioting is the language of the oppressed. Now, racially coded language, but technically not overtly racist. For example, predatory criminals and welfare queens. I want to help you in a very sobering way. Those are derogatory terms directed specifically to people of color. Now, next slide, please. Ronald Reagan. He started this term, war on drugs. But what many people do not realize, that was a code word for Black males. Oh, yes, I said it, and I'll say it again. Because Michelle Alexander does the digging and the research to support that, listen, less than 2% of Americans view drugs as the most important issue facing the nation. And yet he says we have a war on drugs. Think about it. You would think if it was a crisis that the percentile would be up around 80 or 90 or even 95%. Yes, we now have a war on drugs. Federal anti-drug funding from 8 million in, listen to this, in 1980 to 95 million in 1984. Yet money for treatment and prevention was cut by 3/4. You do the math, my friend. And where the intentionality was just cobbling all these Black men together, putting them in a cell so society doesn't have to deal with them. And as you know, media, they have the camera, and so they create the narrative and created this sensation to about the use of crack cocaine, which increased only after the research is clear, after the war on drugs. And so you have to ask yourself, where is this crisis that makes the president want to put his campaign on war on drugs? Next slide. Let's go a little bit deeper. Well, in 1992, these are the facts. And I say to you, if you want to negate them, let's have a conversation. But you bring me the facts, just like I'm bringing them to you. In 1992, Bill Clinton escalated the drug war. His campaign was tougher on crime. Now listen, he increased sentencing for drug crimes. President Bill Clinton, under his administration, increased sentencing for drug crimes, increased spending for corrections, and slashed spending for housing and welfare. Now, here's the caveat right here. When you increase the sentencing, look at the last bullet point, and reduce the rights for drug felons. This is what I wanted to tell you earlier. So if they can get a tag on you that you're a felon, look at what happens. You're no longer qualified for housing. Do you know that if you're a felon, you can't go to the housing authority and apply because it is what we call an exclusionary criteria? That's right. Do you know that there's a national campaign right now called Check the Box? I'm not sure if you're aware of it or not. I want you to do your homework. I'm about out of time, but I got to tell you something, that there's a national campaign to remove that box of are you a felon or have you been arrested? Because the truth of the matter is people use it as a exclusionary criteria. And let me talk about food stamps. Yes, do you not know that if you're a felon, you don't qualify for any federal assistance? So if they can put the tag on you that you're a felon, look at what they're able to legally discriminate against you on. My time is about out. Listen, I gotta. Can I get one more slide in? One more slide. Let's see if we can go just a little bit further. What we know. Next slide, please. I got about 1 minute left. This whole notion, this war on drugs, right in Winston-Salem, our police department was indicted for having these pretext traffic stops. That there were more traffic stops in East Winston disproportionately to the west side of town where the more affluent live. And the ACLA, thank you for coming in and rescuing and holding our PD accountable until they had to acknowledge that there was some misappropriations in those efforts. Stop and frisk. The majority of the people are people of color. Listen, these are all the use of SWAT teams in drug raids, homes, public housing, and schools. Listen, the whole notion is around this issue of the war on drugs. And I close by saying it's a code word for a war on black males. That's all the time I have for you today. I want to thank you for your time. My time is up. Yes, I'm unapologetic. We're going to go even harder in next week. I'm going to bring some scholars in, scholarly, to give you some additional information to make you understand that this is a crisis in our country. And the more people we can keep out of that incarceration system, the more we increase their chances of survival. That's all the time I have for you today. I want to thank you for yours. We've got some great scholars coming in next week, the week after. I want you to tune in again, because what we want to do is have a real honest conversation. Can I pray with you? The Lord bless you today. The Lord keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you. It is my prayer today. God, give us wisdom and knowledge to be able to remember the Great Commission. When you have done it to the least of these, you have done it unto me. God bless you. Until next time.